Welcome back to CPAC 2025. It's a packed hall at the lunch hour, and we're joined by Alireza Jafarzedah, who is an expert on Iranian affairs and what's taking place with their nuclear centrifuges and stopping that process. Sir, thank you for joining Right Side Broadcasting Network Live. How do we handle the current situation with Iran diplomatically? Of course, President Trump has been very clear that he does not want Iran to have that nuclear weapon. How does diplomacy play a key effect in all of these negotiations?
Well, first of all, we have to understand that when it comes to Iran, their nuclear program has always been, since day one, about nuclear weapons. There's nothing peaceful about it. When we first exposed the nuclear sites of Iran in August of 2002, the Parliament in Exile, the National Council of Resistance of Iran, the program was in the early stages. There was a chance for the world to stop it. And we actually triggered the UN nuclear watchdog, the IAEA, to inspect those sites. But unfortunately, Europeans, the EU3 at the time, and the United States were busy involved with the negotiations, just giving Tehran what they wanted. They legitimized the nuclear weapons program, and they just gave them concessions, hoping that the regime will stop its nuclear program. To the contrary, it has further emboldened the regime. The regime has its nuclear program far more advanced now than they ever had. They're developing nuclear warheads. They're speeding up their process. They're enriching uranium way beyond the peaceful level. They have their missile program and they're weaponizing it. All of that is under very little, if any, scrutiny at all. That needs to stop, and we need to see the closure of all the nuclear sites of Iran. Now, the role of diplomacy is that you need to make it clear to the Iranian regime that the only negotiations that could be legitimately pursued is about when and how to end the nuclear weapons program of Iran. They need to shut down, and the only role that really the IAEA could play is to monitor the shutting down of the program, rather than just dragging this issue for over 20 years, getting inspectors into Iran and then kicking them out, not allowing them to go to certain sites, just saying these sites are off limits because they're military sites. That's the game that the regime has played with the outside world while moving the program forward. That's what the diplomacy should do. But honestly speaking, knowing the nature of this regime, the only way you can end the nuclear threat of the Iranian regime is to end the rule of the clerics. And of course, that's the responsibility of the people of Iran and the Iranian resistance. There's no need for boots on the ground or appropriating money. The US, Europe, and other nations, they need to hold the regime accountable, step up, sanctions on them, and at the same time create space for those on the ground who are already involved in bringing down the regime and ending the rule of the clerics. Since 2018, there has been 9 rounds of major uprisings in Iran in all 31 provinces. There is a very capable, organized force that is both fighting them on the ground, but also in this parliament in exile. They have a platform for the future of Iran, a peaceful transition to a free, democratic, non-nuclear republic Iran. It has tremendous support internationally in the U.S. Congress and others. But that needs to be supported. That needs to be enhanced much further, because we are racing against the clock.
And how would that be done specifically, peacefully, and patriotically to remove the clerics? We do know that the royalty of Iran has been exiled and does speak up about this, but would it be a difficult process to ultimately change the government to what it once was, or to have actual free and fair elections and not have this totalitarian government that is ruling with an iron fist?
Absolutely, you're correct that the totalitarian government, the Iranian people are rejecting any form of dictatorship. I remember I was a student at the time of the Shah, that he had a secret police savak, and he announced a single party rule, and he was torturing political prisoners. That really led to the revolution, but too bad the Ayatollahs stole the leadership of a genuine revolution. Now the people are against the theocracy. Now that they have rejected, one of the main slogans in the streets is that down with the oppressor, be it the Shah or the supreme leader. The future belongs to those who want the vote of the people count, a true representative government, a republic form of government. Now, how does that happen? Obviously, it's not an easy task. The burden is on the people on the ground, and it's not something you want to create. It's already there. The protests are already there. People want an end to the rule of clerics. They want to end any form of dictatorship. The policy in the past 2-3 decades has been to basically appease the regime, trying to find a way of working with this regime. That policy has failed. Once you shut down that process and you build pressure and understand that right now the situation in the region is far different than 5-10 years ago. This regime is far weaker now than it was before. They lost all their proxies in the region. They lost the biggest ally, Bashar Assad in Syria. It went down. And what happened in Syria should be a clear indication to everyone that, dictators seem to be invincible until they're not.
Right.
And that's what happened in Syria in 11 days. Can happen and must happen regarding Iran. And a lot of people, young people in Iran, they're looking at Syria saying, well, this is the country that the regime boasted so much about, invested so heavily, it went down. We can do the same thing. And I think what President Trump said regarding Syria, he said, let the people settle their score with the repressive rulers, which they did.
Right.
The same situation should be regarding Iran. Let the people of Iran, let the organized force, let those who are fighting the regime settle their score. And that's why, come March 8th, the next, it's a Saturday, Iran and Americans are coming from all over the United States to Washington to have a big rally saying that we want pressure on the Iran regime, but we are supporting democracy and freedom and political pluralism. We need the world to stand on our side so that we can free Iran. They're going to support the 10-point platform that is introduced by the leader of the opposition, Mrs. Mariam Rajavi, a female, that calls for separation of religion and state and gender equality, freedom of religion, and a free market economy and non-nuclear Iran. That's the kind of thing we need to galvanize and build support for. Before, it was all about negotiations, what to give to the Ayatollahs, search for so-called moderates within the Iranian regime. That all has failed. You need to now focus on the people of Iran that have been ignored over the years. You need to focus on a policy that would work, and that's where we're working on.
And this is there's a march happening in Washington, you said?
Yes, there's a big march and rally happening in Washington on the 8th of March, the next month. And there are thousands coming from all over the United States. They start from the Capitol and march towards close to the White House. And their call is that, stand with the people of Iran who want change. And stand for the legitimacy of the right of the people to overthrow the repressive rulers. And that has been missing over the years. Now is the time to do that. And there's a very small window of opportunity before the mullahs are able to run out the clock, the nuclear clock, because all of the sanctions will be lifted by come October, the ability to, the UN sanctions. So that's why we're calling for triggering back the UN sanctions on the Iran regime on the nuclear issue. We're calling for additional sanctions, but also we're calling for standing on the side of the people of Iran and supporting them. There's a very strong voice on Capitol Hill, bipartisan voice, supporting this, Mrs. Rajavi and her 10-point plan. We need to galvanize everything around that, and you will see the impact of a change of policy there.
And how is your organization directly impacting that future change?
Well, what we're doing is that, number one, we're exposing the regime's behavior. We were the ones who exposed all the major nuclear sites. We exposed the terror operation of the Iran regime. We exposed their human rights violations. But also our network inside Iran is engaged, which is the same network that provides this information, is engaged in acting as the engine for change during the protests and making sure that the focus remains on changing the regime, nothing else, and there is continuity and all of that, but also having a clear roadmap to the future, because some people may say, well, what if there is chaos after the fall of the Ayatollahs?
Right.
Well, we have the epicenter of chaos is already ruling Iran. They are the head of the state of war and terror, but we have a plan. There's going to be free and fair elections within 6 months after the fall of the Ayatollahs that would lead to the formation of a National and Constituent Assembly. And that National and Constituent Assembly, which are consist of representatives of people, will draft set up a transitional government, will draft a new constitution, will put it for vote of the population, so you would have a true representative government in Iran. That's the roadmap, and we are really very confident that that can happen. And all we need to do is just line up all of our vectors towards that direction, rather than going back to negotiations or going in the wrong direction.
And that's, I think, kind of the question of if this revolution, in a sense, does happen through the people of Iran on boots on the ground. How does Russia react? How does the Shia Crescent react in the sense of the Houthi rebels, Hamas, Hezbollah? Have they been weakened since the Hamas-led attack on Israel, did take place back in October of 2023?
Well, that's a great question, because, up until very recently, the Iran regime had built this perception that, they're invincible, they're controlling the whole region, they have all these proxies, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Assad, big ally there, and the you mentioned the Houthis, in Yemen, the Shia militias in Iraq, and their supporters, their proxies in the Palestinian territory, the whole region. But what people saw just in the past few months, they saw the whole thing crumbling. They saw the absolute weakness of the Iranian regime, that they can't, the Iranian regime spent at least $50 billion in trying to keep Assad in power. They use about 100,000 of their proxy forces, including 20,000 Hezbollah forces, to keep Assad in power. They brought in Russia to help keeping Assad in power. All of that was gone in 11 days, okay? So that's a clear indication of the weakness of the regime. It shows to the people of Iran also that this regime is not 10 feet tall. And they can't bring the mullahs down. And I think that's what the message that everybody else will get. Now, the Houthis, they're only, relevant because of the money and the resources coming from Tehran. Hezbollah, their entire creation, continuation, funding, training, arming, all of it came from Iran. Now, it's a lot more difficult, if not impossible, for the regime to provide that kind of support they did before to Hezbollah. A lot of that support went through Syria. Syria is gone. How are you going to do that? And plus, they're being really penalized for the things that they got away with it before. So I think those proxies of the Iran regime are already on their back foot. I don't think they will have the kind of power they used to have before. But also Russia. I mean, Russia, if there was anything they could have done, they would have kept Assad in power, which they did before. But now the whole situation has changed. That's why I think there's a major shift in the balance of power in the whole region, which is against the Iran regime and in favor of change. That's the opportunity we should realize and capitalize on it. And that's how the people of Iran see it. And I think that's how we should be doing it here in the United States, but also in Europe.
And how soon do you think change could come to the Republic of Iran?
Well, when it comes to revolutions, it's always very difficult to give a certain date and time. And, sometimes things happen just basically triggered by something that you don't anticipate. But the one thing you can do, and it's extremely crucial, is that you need to have all the elements ready to go and in place, and create opportunities yourself. You can't just wait for the situation. And that's why the necessity, what is required to have a revolution, you need a population that rejects the current regime, which is already there. You need an organized force that has a history of organization and capability and all of that, which is already done. And they have shown the organized force, the National Council of Resistance, with what they have done in exposing the nuclear sites and all of that. But also they have what they call resistance units on the ground. These are mostly young people who are confronting revolutionary guards day in and day out. They have paid a big price, and the regime has arrested a lot of them, but a lot more have joined. The younger generation have no other future other than seeing a free, as you said, Republic Iran. So all of those elements are there, and I think it's so important for the United States to play its role, for Congress to play its role, for Europe to play their role. Without boots on the ground or appropriating money, that will really be a big and significant boost to the situation there and speed up the process of change. Hopefully, this could happen much sooner than later, and let's hope for 2025.
And where can people learn more about the march on the 8th coming up in Washington, D.C.?
Well, they can go to our website. It's www.ncrius.org. We're also on social media. All of it is at NCRIUS, whether it's Twitter, X, and Facebook, everywhere, Instagram and other places. That information is available there. You can follow us and we keep you updated about that. We want everyone to get involved. This is not something that is related just to the people of Iran. Imagine the impact of a free Iran, a democratic Iran, a republic Iran. What a difference it will make in the whole region. It will change the whole equation, but also globally. So this is something I want every single American to get involved. Talk to your members of Congress, talk to your senators and representatives, ask them to be supportive of this. There are all kinds of legislations right now in support of Mrs. Rajavi's 10-point plan in the House and the Senate. You need to get them, encourage them to get involved. But talk to anybody, any officials, make your voice heard and known, but also be present. If they can join the rally on March 8th at 1 p.m. in front of the Capitol, that would be a big signal and very much welcomed.
Well, it's an amazing restoration of the Persian culture and
absolutely.
For free societies, which Iran once was and can be again.
Yes.
Where can we find you, sir, on social media?
Well, you can get me on X. It's at @_ my last name, which is JAFARZADEH. And I'm also available I'm on Instagram, the same handle, and Facebook and other places.
Mr. Jafarzedah, it's such a pleasure to have you here at Right Side Broadcasting Network. Please come back and give us updates as well. And I think this is a worthy cause. Our viewers will be very interested in it. So if you're in the Washington, D.C. area, March 8th, for that march at 1 o'clock p.m. Eastern in front of the Capitol to support freedom-loving people everywhere, especially our friends in Iran. Thank you for your time today. We look forward to having you again on the show.
Thank you so much. Always a pleasure to be on your show.
Absolutely.
Really appreciate that.
Yes, God bless.
Thank you. God bless you.